For many years, I lived in this modest apartment, a compact little space that was nonetheless bursting with memories and echoes of the past. Every corner held something familiar, stacks of papers accumulated over time, pieces of old furniture that seemed to carry the weight of countless sunsets, and an enveloping silence that settled in like a quiet friend. This apartment wasn't just a place to rest, it was my sanctuary, the spot I returned to day after day, night after night, after exhausting hours spent navigating the relentless hustle and ceaseless energy of the city that literally never sleeps. Here in this small haven, I found a sense of grounding amidst the chaos, a personal retreat filled with a tangible proof of a life painstakingly built over decades. I can still clearly picture that moment when I first set foot in this place. I had just come straight from Europe, carrying with me a whirlwind of excitement, anticipation, and boundless hope for what lay ahead. It was a time when everything felt new and full of possibilities. That was me 3 decades ago, standing there with my eyes wide open and my heart brimming with dreams so vast they seemed even larger than the very city I stood in. Back then, I was filled with youthful energy and an unwavering belief that anything was achievable, ready to take on whatever challenges would come my way. The city greeted me with a dazzling display of neon lights that flickered and buzzed all around, accompanied by the constant hum and clamor of urban life. Everywhere I turned there was noise, car horns blaring, voices shouting, machinery churning, forming a chaotic soundtrack that somehow felt alive and full of promise. I managed to secure a job at a modest little factory on the edge of town. The hours were long and grueling, stretching late into the night, but I was young and full of energy, determined to prove myself and convinced that this experience would define the rest of my days. I held on to the hopeful belief that this moment, this job, this phase of life would continue indefinitely, like an unending chapter in my story. Days blurred together in a relentless haze, each one indistinguishable from the last. The relentless grind of steel and sweat, the heavy fatigue that settles deep into tired muscles, became the rhythm of my existence. I pushed through with a quiet resolve, paying my dues without a single complaint or hesitation, convinced that every ache and every exhausting moment was simply the cost of forging a pathway toward a brighter, more promising future. It was a sacrifice I willingly accepted, believing that enduring this hardship was the only way to pave the road to a life worth striving for, a life that would reward all my effort in the end. Those sturdy, reliable boots became more than just footwear. They were my steadfast companions, carrying me through countless long, grueling shifts that tested my endurance and resolve. Every step I took in them felt like a small victory, a symbol of my dedication and hard work. I felt a deep sense of pride each time I laced them up, knowing they had supported me through tired mornings and late nights, through chaos and calm alike. They bore witness to my effort, my perseverance, and the unspoken promise I made to myself to push forward no matter what. However, as time went on, the relentless demands of the work began to take their toll. My body, once resilient and strong, started whispering warnings, aches, fatigue, a growing sense of exhaustion that no amount of pride could ignore. Eventually, my body reached its limit, signaling that enough was enough, and I had to listen. The boots that once felt like a symbol of pride and strength now felt heavier, a reminder of the toll that non-stop effort can take. My sense of accomplishment was tinged with a bittersweet awareness that sometimes, even the most dependable tools can't carry us forever. That moment of realization marked a turning point, knowing I had to pause, rest, and reconsider how much I could continue pushing myself before I truly broke. Meals were always inexpensive and rarely took much time to prepare, making them an easy fix in a hectic life. Ramen noodles became almost a staple, simple, quick, and satisfying enough to get me through the rough patches. Bread was another constant, fresh or stale, whatever could fill me up or serve as a quick snack. I didn't have much room for indulging in culinary pleasures or splurging on fancy dishes. Every penny was accounted for, each dollar spent on essential things to keep my head above water. There was no space for luxuries or moments of leisure centered around eating. It was all about practicality and efficiency. My focus was solely on maintaining enough energy to keep moving forward, paying bills that piled up and dealing with the daily grind. Surviving day to day was a grind in itself, constant, relentless, each meal just a small but necessary effort to keep going in a world that didn't much care about indulgence or comfort. Debt accumulated rapidly, an unrelenting tide that overwhelmed every corner of my life, leaving me drowning in unpayable sums I could barely comprehend. Bills stacked up on the kitchen counter, their red stamps and urgent notices glaring at me day and night, reminding me of my mounting failure to stay afloat financially. Despite the mounting pressure, I kept pushing forward, clocking in hours at work, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy, holding on to the hope that somehow, I could turn things around. But no matter how much I worked, how many extra shifts I took, the weight of my circumstances only grew heavier, pressing down on my shoulders and making each day feel more burdensome than the last. The city around me seemed indifferent to my struggles, as if it had no place for someone like me, someone drowning in debt and despair. It didn't pause, hesitate, or offer any kind of forgiveness. It simply kept moving forward, blazing past, leaving me behind in the dust of my unfulfilled hopes and dreams, with nothing but the echo of my unspoken worries and the relentless pounding of my own heavy footsteps. I took this same subway every single day without fail. The faces around me were blank, expressions devoid of emotion, as if everyone was lost in their own separate worlds. Their eyes didn't truly see anything. They seemed to be gazing right through the moment, past everything in front of them without really noticing. Amidst all this, there was an old man carrying a heavy bag, moving quietly through the throng. He blended into the flow of people so completely that no one gave him a second glance, treating him as nothing more than just another indistinguishable figure in the endless crowd. I gazed out over the sprawling cityscape from the perch of my apartment window, taking in the endless sea of buildings, roads, and lights stretching far into the distance. The city was vibrant, pulsing with motion and sound. Cars darting through their daily routines, people rushing past in a blur of activity, neon signs flickering and casting colorful glows onto the streets below. Despite all this energy and life, I couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider, a ghost among millions of strangers. The cold numbed my skin, the chill seeping into my bones, making everything feel sharper, more distant. I observed the city's heartbeat from afar, feeling almost intangible, invisible to the chaos and vibrancy that seemed to carry on without me, as if I were standing outside, looking in on a world that moved relentlessly onward, while I remained quietly on the sidelines, a silent witness to it all. Work had always been the single thread that wove together the fabric of who I was. My sense of purpose, my daily rhythm, even my social life revolved entirely around the job. The union was like a safety net, a steady force that supported me through the ups and downs, giving me a sense of security and belonging in a world that often felt unpredictable. But when the day came that I finally stepped away from the routine, the moment I retired, the quiet that settled over my life was far more profound and oppressive than I ever could have imagined. The absence of the daily bustle, the meetings, the chatter, and the structured demands left a void that was unexpectedly vast, a silence weighing heavily on me and echoing louder than I had anticipated. Retirement brought with it an unexpected and deep sense of loneliness that settled into my daily existence. The vibrant social interactions and busy rhythms that had once characterized my life gradually faded away, leaving me with no one to share the passing of my days. My apartment, which had previously been filled with the hustle and bustle of activity, laughter, and companionship, slowly transformed into a quiet, hollow space. The walls seemed to close in, echoing with silence rather than the lively conversations and warmth I was used to. The emptiness was not just physical but emotional, creating a profound stillness that underscored the absence of connection and the companionship I once took for granted. Earning just enough to scrape by and yet still handing over what felt like an unfair portion, the city's needs constantly looming over me, regardless of whether I was actively working or just trying to survive each day. The endless stream of demands went beyond the simple act of paying taxes. It felt more like a constant reminder that the system doesn't pause, doesn't discriminate, and continues to operate irrespective of individual circumstances or personal hardships. Even in times when my financial reality shrank to its smallest possible size, the city's expectations remained fixed and uncompromising, leaving me to grapple with the sense that no matter how little I made or how quietly I endured, the financial obligations to the city persisted, unaltered and unrelenting. Money seemed to disappear from my hands much faster than I initially anticipated or expected, almost as if it had a mind of its own and was intentionally slipping away. Things became increasingly difficult as I found myself unable to stay on top of the mounting bills, rent payments, and the basic necessities needed for everyday life. The struggle to stretch every dollar further became a constant challenge, and I realized with growing concern that I was quickly falling behind, no longer able to afford the essentials that kept life manageable and somewhat comfortable. Rain pooled on the streets, forming dark, shimmering puddles that spread out unevenly across the crumbling pavement and fractured sidewalks, reflecting the dull, gray sky above. The entire city seemed to have absorbed the chill of the storm, casting a colder, more desolate atmosphere over everything, almost as if the rain had washed away its warmth, its life. It felt emptier now, as if the streets themselves echoed with a hollow silence, missing the chatter, the footsteps, the laughter that once brought them vitality. The grayness seeped into my bones, reminding me with quiet certainty that I was just drifting through this vast, indifferent landscape, adrift in a sea of memories and echoes from a time when I had still had anchors, roots, a purpose. Now I was unmoored, floating aimlessly in a world that no longer felt like mine, with no family left to hold on to, no familiar faces to turn to. The loneliness crept in beneath the relentless drizzle, wrapping around me like a shroud, whispering that I was completely alone, left to navigate the city's endless grayness, its emptiness echoing my own. I have spent my entire life living in this city, growing up within its boundaries and watching it change around me as the years went by. Every single corner I turn, every street I walk down, holds a piece of my past and forms part of my personal story, memories woven into the fabric of this place that once felt like home. But despite all these deep connections and the familiarity I should feel, there's a growing sense inside me that this city no longer welcomes me the way it used to. The streets I knew so well now seem strange and distant, and the place I once embraced with a strong sense of belonging has shifted into somewhere I can no longer truly call my own. Dust gradually settles over all the objects that have been long neglected or left untouched. Each of these items, no matter how insignificant they may seem at first glance, carries within it a silent narrative, tales of the effort once invested in their creation or use, the inevitable march of decay that erodes their surfaces and edges over the years, and the relentless passage of time that moves forward, regardless of our attention or care. Every speck of dust becomes a mute witness to these stories, clinging to surfaces that have witnessed countless moments, quiet yet profound in their own way. Forgotten things, left to gather this layer of dust, seem to rest in a kind of hibernation, holding on to whispers of the past, snippets of lives lived, dreams realized or abandoned, moments of joy or sorrow that have long since faded from memory but linger still in the silent dust-covered corners. These objects silently beg for recognition, for someone to pause and listen to the faint echoes of what once was, as if they are waiting for their stories to be rediscovered amidst the quiet, mystical stillness that dust and time have woven around them. I used to spend a good amount of time sitting down with pen and paper, pouring out my thoughts and feelings in the form of letters. These weren't just casual notes. They often carried my hopes, my fears, my stories, and my little pieces of everyday life that I wanted to share with my family members, my friends, those I cared about. Writing those letters was a way for me to stay connected, to bridge the gap of distance and time, to let others know what was happening inside me, what I was thinking, or how much they meant to me. Back then, it felt like a comforting ritual, sitting quietly, collecting my thoughts, and carefully choosing words to convey everything I wanted to say. But things have changed so much since then. Over time, as life moved on and circumstances shifted, I found myself talking less through written words and more through other means, or perhaps not at all. Now my family members and friends are all gone from my life physically, gone from this world altogether. The letters I once poured my heart into, those heartfelt messages I crafted with so much intention, now sit quietly in a box or scattered among the clutter, just stories of what once was. Those letters which I thought about sending or sometimes hesitated to send, have now become part of an accumulation, an ocean of unsent messages, of words left unspoken, of feelings I once wanted to share but never did. They join a growing pile of things I never managed to send out into the world, remnants of a past I can't quite reach anymore, housed among pages and papers that have become memories rather than communications.
Radio servait da mai sol link tous outils world, a fragile trait tedring me beyond diswals.
In the early hours, I would turn it on, hoping for news that might tell me what was happening beyond my isolated space, but more often than not, I found myself immersed in almost complete silence. The silence was punctuated only sporadically by the crackling and hissing of static, crackles that sounded like distant signals or faint echoes from a lost world. Sometimes I would catch snippets of distant voices or fleeting melodies, but most of the time, it was that unending static-laced silence that filled my ears, echoing the emptiness of my surroundings and the distance from anything familiar or alive outside. It became a kind of companion in its own quiet, unobtrusive way, a constant reminder of my separation from the world beyond these four walls, a steady, unchanging background to my days and nights. The radio was more than just a device. It was my connection to hope, to information, to the faint whispers of life that persisted somewhere out there, beyond my reach and understanding. Each time I pressed the switch, I hoped for a crack or a voice, but often I was met with only the ghostly hum of static, a sound that seemed to linger, almost like a breathing thing, filling the silence with its persistent presence. It kept me grounded, listening patiently for any sign of movement, any story, no matter how faint or distant, that could remind me that outside still existed, still turned, still moved despite my confinement. And so I sat, tuned in to that fragile fleeting signal, finding comfort and loneliness in that endless static silence. I've worn this coat through countless winters, each one leaving its mark, its story stitched into the fabric over the years. It's seen the coldest days and the warmest moments, wrapped around me like a silent witness to everything I've experienced. Now it's worn out, frayed at the edges, threads coming loose in places where I once clung tightly to it, much like the way I hold on to certain memories, some vivid, some faded, but all of them leaving an imprint on me. Just like this coat, I've grown heavy with memories I can't quite forget, memories that linger like a shadow I'm afraid to fully cast off. There's a paradox in that, wanting to forget, yet somehow feeling anchored to what was. It's a strange kinship, this worn-out coat and my own aging soul, both carrying the weight of years and moments that refuse to let go, even as they fade into the background of my mind. I don't want to hold on to these memories forever, but they cling to me stubbornly, refusing to be discarded, much like this coat, scratched, torn, yet somehow still a part of me, a testament to all that's been. Time dragged painfully slowly, crawling forward at an agonizing pace that seemed almost torturous in its relentless steadiness. The days stretched on endlessly, each one either marked by hurried crosses in a worn-out calendar or left blank, as if they were insignificant blots on an already faded picture. These days, whether visibly acknowledged or not, melded together into a relentless, indistinguishable blur, dissolving one into the next with a sameness that smudged any sense of progression or change. It was as if each of these days was part of a long, unbroken chain, stretching into a horizon that hadn't moved in what felt like an eternity, an endless loop of routine that held everything in stasis. The rhythm of life seemed to slow down, each moment lingering just a bit longer than it should, making the passing of time feel like an endless tide creeping forward at a crawl, washing over the same familiar ground over and over again. The distinctions between one day and the next faded to almost nothing, so much so that it became impossible to tell them apart, whether they were marked with a simple cross or left bare, each one blending seamlessly into the next in an ongoing procession of sameness. Days dragged by with a heavy weight, each one blurring into the next until they felt like one continuous, unending stretch of time, an endless cycle of time slipping by unnoticed, uncelebrated, and unremarked upon, leaving only an inward sense of being caught in a perpetual limbo where everything was static, unchanging, and eerily still. I had this strong desire in me to capture those fleeting moments, to take photographs, to record little fragments of time so that I could hold on to them forever. I wanted to preserve those experiences in some tangible form, something that would keep them alive beyond the immediate now. But somehow, despite that urge, I never managed to actually do it. I let those chances slip by, and now, all that's left are memories fading at the edges, growing hazy and distant with each passing day. The vividness has dulled, and what remains feels like fragments of a dream, impossible to grasp fully, just faint echoes that waver in my mind. This was my space, my sanctuary, my refuge, and the place where I felt most myself. I spent countless nights lying awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling above, lost in a swirl of thoughts and feelings that I never dared to voice aloud to anyone. Those quiet hours often felt like they stretched endlessly, a liminal zone where my mind would wander through memories, anxieties, dreams, and fears I kept tucked away. In those moments, the ceiling became a canvas for my silent musings, a blank surface bearing witness to the secrets and contemplations I couldn't share with others. The stillness of the night amplified the ghosts of unspoken words, filling the room with an almost palpable weight of unresolved emotions. It was a space where my internal world played out in vivid detail, untouched by external judgment or interference. Sitting in the darkness, I'd often ponder the things I couldn't admit aloud, hopes I dared not hope, doubts I refused to confront, feelings too fragile to be exposed to light. That room became a silent companion, keeping my secrets and thoughts safe within its quiet walls while I wrestled with them alone in the shadows. Sometimes I wondered if those endless nights of staring at the ceiling were a form of quiet rebellion, a way of holding on to my own thoughts in a world that often felt too loud and overwhelming. Other times, it was simply a refuge, a place where I could retreat into my own mind and momentarily escape the chaos outside. No matter what the reason, those nights shaped a part of me, anchoring my inner life in the stillness of that space, where I could confront my unspoken truths and find a kind of solace in my solitude. I carefully maintained the state of these belongings, keeping them packed and ready, always prepared for the day I might finally take the step to leave this place, to move on from everything that held me back. Yet, despite that readiness, I never actually did it. I stayed rooted here, feeling caught in a limbo, unable to fully move forward or let go of what still clung to my heart. I found myself stuck in a space between the memories of the past, the moments that shaped me, the comforts I knew, and the uncertain future that beckoned just beyond my reach. The weight of indecision, or perhaps fear, kept me tethered, unable to fully release or pursue what might have been waiting for me beyond this boundary. So, even with everything packed and the possibility within reach, I remained here, trapped in a quiet, unresolved state, caught between what was once familiar and the untold, untraveled road ahead. As I wandered through these streets, the same streets I had known so well for so many years, I couldn't help but notice all the familiar places around me. Every corner I turned, every twist and bend in the road, brought back memories from the past, each one carrying a piece of my history, a whisper of the time I had spent here. But despite the deep connection I once felt, something had changed. Now those very places, with all their familiarity, seemed somehow distant and removed, as if they had faded away into a softer, less tangible version of themselves, unable to fully capture the vividness they once held in my mind. I used to spend countless nights dreaming of big things, ambitions that reached far beyond the horizon of my current life, goals that seemed almost tangible in my mind's eye, filled with hope and a sense of limitless possibility. Back then, my thoughts would wander to visions of success, of making a difference, of carving out a space for myself amid the chaos and grandeur of the sprawling city that embraced me. I would imagine achieving greatness, chasing dreams that fueled my every step forward, painting grand images of a future where everything aligned perfectly. Those dreams kept me motivated, gave me purpose, and filled my heart with anticipation for what could be. But now, in the harsh reality that has settled over me, survival has become my primary concern. Getting through each day, managing each moment, fighting to stay afloat in this vast, unpredictable city that never seems to pause. It's a constant struggle to keep my footing amid the noise and rush, to hold on to even the faintest hope when exhaustion threatens to swallow me whole. As a result, the dreams that once ignited my spirit have faded into the background of my mind. I forget what I once hoped to achieve here, the aspirations I held onto so tightly during a different time. The sprawling city, with its endless streets and towering buildings, now seems overwhelming, a place where my initial ambitions have become distant echoes amid the daily grind. The fire that once propelled me forward has dimmed, replaced by a quieter, more cautious awareness of simply getting by. In this new reality, the grand visions and lofty goals have been pushed aside, overshadowed by the pressing need to endure each moment and keep moving forward, no matter how hard it gets. When I take a moment to really look at myself, I see a reflection that tells a story of many years filled with hard work, perseverance, and sometimes even setbacks. Over time, I have poured so much of myself into the experiences I've lived through, trying to grow, to improve, and to make sense of it all. But along the way, I've also known loss of youthful innocence, of vitality, of strength that once seemed endless. The person staring back at me no longer carries the same vibrancy, the vigor that once defined me has faded, replaced by a quieter, more subdued presence. I see not the person I was in my prime, but rather a changed shadow of that individual, a version shaped by the passage of time, by struggles endured, by the wear and tear accumulated over the years. The reflection reveals a complex mixture of accomplishments and regrets, a testament to a life lived with all its ups and downs. I am no longer that young person bursting with energy and hope, no longer embodying the resilience and power that once seemed boundless. Instead, I find myself looking at someone who has weathered many storms, who bears the marks of time, a figure that is more reserved, more contemplative, and perhaps a little weary. Yet beneath the surface, I sense a quiet dignity, an acceptance of everything that has shaped me, still holding on to fragments of that strength, even if it's now quieter and more subdued. The person staring back at me is a mosaic of all that I have experienced: lost youth, gained wisdom, enduring pain, and moments of fleeting joy. It's a reminder that I am no longer the person I used to be, but someone who's grown and changed in ways that are still unfolding, still becoming. Looking at myself now, I see not just the shadows of what once was, but also the potential of who I am becoming in this new chapter of life. Money was extremely tight, tighter than I had ever experienced before. Every single dollar I had was precious, and every cent counted more than ever. I quickly learned how to stretch each one to its absolute limit, making sure nothing went to waste. The luxury of generosity that I once enjoyed was completely gone, replaced by a new reality where survival meant focusing solely on necessity. There was no room for extras or kindness beyond what was essential to get by. Are they merely a trick of the light, or are they something more threatening? Do they signify change, or are they a reflection of my own fear of change? Night after night, I remain rooted in this moment, watching those inky figures stretch out further, nervously contemplating what lies ahead, uncertain if I am still part of this place, or if I am fading into the darkness alongside those ever-lengthening shadows. The city's riches, its wealth, its allure, they no longer belong to someone like me, or rather not to me anymore. I've drifted away from that life, from the crowds and the constant rush, and now I savor these quiet moments, these solitary meals, knowing that I've chosen a different path, one where the simple pleasures outweigh the glittering illusions of material abundance. There's peace in knowing that what I have, a humble meal, solitude, a moment of stillness, is enough, even as the city continues to swirl and pulse with its endless energy beyond my window. This quiet acceptance brings a strange comfort, a sense that I am exactly where I need to be, embracing simplicity amid the chaos, finding richness not in possessions, but in these small, solitary moments that remind me of who I am and what truly matters. The bills began accumulating rapidly, electricity, water, and countless other expenses, each one adding to the growing mountain of unpaid dues that seemed to loom over everything. Now, every single one has gone unpaid, left lingering in the shadows of neglect, as I watch helplessly from the sidelines. The comfort and ease I once knew in the city, the sense of security and belonging I took for granted, have now become nothing more than a faint, distant memory, something I can no longer afford to hold on to, let alone experience again. I find myself hardly ever stepping outside the walls of this apartment anymore. The hallway leading out no longer feels like just a passage to another place. Instead, it seems to stretch between two very different versions of myself. On one side, there's the person I used to be, full of dreams and possibilities, while on the other, there's the person I've grown into, shaped by experiences, changes, and time. That narrow corridor almost acts as a bridge connecting my past and present, making the simple act of leaving feel like crossing from one stage of life to another. Things I genuinely cherished, tiny tokens, small keepsakes that serve as silent witnesses to a life once lived, moments that hold a deep sense of nostalgia within them. These objects, though often modest in appearance, are rich with memories, each one representing a fragment of a past existence filled with joy, sorrow, and everything in between. They stand as quiet reminders of birthdays celebrated with laughter and love, holidays marked by warmth and togetherness, and connections with people whose presence once filled my days with meaning but who are now absent from my reality. Every one of these tokens is like a small bridge to those bygone times, whispering stories of friendships, family gatherings, fleeting romances, and everyday occurrences that once seemed insignificant but now feel like precious treasures. They evoke a sense of longing and gratitude simultaneously, gratitude for having experienced those moments and longing for the intimacy and closeness that have since faded or been lost. These keepsakes serve as gentle anchors to a life that has moved on, anchoring me amidst the passage of time and the inevitable shifts that come with it. They remind me of the beauty and fragility of human connections, of the impermanence of joy and familiarity, and of the enduring power of memory preserved in small, tangible forms. In their quiet presence, I find comfort and a kind of bittersweet reflection, acknowledging both what once was and what remains etched into the fabric of my history. Am I just an observer of life, or am I still part of its vibrant, pulsing heart? The world continues to turn, indifferent yet somehow beautiful, as I remain here, pondering the silent questions of my own existence amidst the gentle glow of morning light. I once spent countless hours absorbed in stories about a vast and wondrous world that existed far beyond the confines of these four walls surrounding me. Those tales of distant places, vibrant landscapes, and lives lived freely in open spaces filled my mind with hope and endless possibility. But now, those adventures feel distant and unreachable. Instead of exploring new horizons through the pages of books, I find myself trapped within the pages of my own past, endlessly revisiting the echoes of my memories. The vibrant stories I once eagerly devoured have been replaced by the quiet, haunting reverberations of moments long gone, repeating endlessly in my thoughts, as if the outside world has faded into nothing more than a distant and unreachable dream. I have set up a small, modest shrine right here, a quiet space dedicated to honoring the memory of those who are no longer present in my life. It's nothing elaborate or grand, just a humble, unassuming spot that reflects the simplicity of my current existence. This little shrine stands as a gentle reminder of the people I once held close, now gone but still deeply cherished, a testament to the quieter, pared-down rhythm my life has taken on. Time slowed. I watch it, wishing I could turn back or just find peace in its passing. I find myself parked here in these quiet moments, gazing out at the urban landscape spread out before me, rows of city streets stretching into the distance, bustling with life and movement that never seems to slow down. The humid breeze brushes against my skin, carrying with it a mixture of scents from the city, the distant scent of roasted coffee, the faint aroma of street food mingling with the exhaust fumes and the scent of rain-warmed pavement. That breeze, so gentle yet persistent, serves as a constant reminder of everything I've let slip away. Each gust seems to whisper stories of memories lost, of dreams once cherished but now faded into the background of my life. It's this combination of sights, sounds, and sensations, the busy streets, the warm air, the subtle pressure of the breeze, that evoke in me a deep, almost aching sense of nostalgia. I can't help but feel the weight of what's gone, the moments I never truly appreciated until they were just memories, now floating just beyond my reach. Sitting here, immersed in this fleeting sensory experience, I realize how much I've lost: opportunities, time, innocence, all slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. This quiet reflection in the midst of the city's relentless energy makes me acutely aware of the transient nature of life, how everything changes and how, sometimes, the greatest losses are the ones you didn't even notice happening at the time. But amidst all of that, there's a strange comfort too, in recognizing the impermanence of it all, an understanding that, despite losing so much, life itself keeps moving, the streets keep bustling, and somehow, I keep finding my way back to this moment of quiet contemplation. I have made the journey of traveling only a single time, and that was many years ago, far in the past. Since then, this passport I hold has become nothing more than a simple stack of paper, an object filled with stamps and visas, serving merely as a tangible reminder. These pages hold the echoes and fragments of distant places I once visited, places that now live only in my memories. Those destinations feel like distant dreams, locations I know I will never have the chance to experience again in person. The passport, once a key to the world, now rests silently, a symbol of adventures that have faded into the landscape of my mind, forever out of reach. I used to keep a journal steadfastly, pouring out my thoughts, feelings, and experiences, words about each day, the struggles I faced, the quiet victories I managed to achieve, no matter how small they seemed at the time. It was a way to hold on to moments, to make sense of everything swirling inside me, to document the ebb and flow of my life. But now, the pages are completely blank, untouched, void of the scribbles and stories that once filled them. That emptiness feels strikingly similar to how my life seems at the moment, completely empty, lacking the substance, the color, the vitality that used to be there. It's as if both my journal and my life are paused in a state of silence, waiting for something to fill them again, waiting for a spark of meaning or direction to come back and breathe life into the emptiness. The contrast between the past-filled pages and the present empty ones highlights the stillness I find myself in, an emptiness that echoes the quiet that has settled over me, the sense that perhaps both my words and my life need some kind of renewal, some new stories to tell, some new victories to celebrate. Until then, I sit with this blankness, contemplating what has been lost and what might be yet to come. Food, shelter, work, that was enough once. Now just enough for today, no more than that, in a city that doesn't stop. The photos remind me of youth, futures planned, faces loved. Now, all that remains are shadows and memories. Outside, life continues, unnoticed, relentless. Inside, I feel the weight of years, belonging to no one now. Even in silence, I still make tea. A small comfort, like holding on to fragments of normalcy. As the day ends, I sit quietly. The city is beautiful yet indifferent, and I wonder how much longer I can stay. That's me, many years ago. Now here I am, just a shadow of those days, living quietly, among all the unspoken stories of a life in New York.